Have you ever noticed that the people who stay calm during chaos always seem to have the most power? While everyone else argues, defends themselves, and desperately tries to prove they're right, they simply watch. They don't react. They don't explain. They don't chase approval. And somehow they always come out ahead. This isn't luck, it's psychology. The strongest minds understand a truth that most people discover far too late. Every emotional reaction gives someone else a glimpse into how to control you. In this video, you'll uncover 7 timeless psychological principles inspired by Machiavellian thinking that reveal why silence often defeats arguments, why indifference is more powerful than revenge, and why the people who master their emotions become almost impossible to manipulate. Stay until the end, because the final principle is the one that changes everything. If you're ready to understand the hidden psychology of influence, emotional control, and mental strength, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. Every day, millions of people unknowingly surrender their power. They do it in meetings, in relationships, on social media, and during simple conversations. They believe they're defending themselves, protecting their reputation, or standing up for what's right. But beneath every emotional reaction lies an invisible cost. The moment someone can predict your response, they gain an advantage over you. They know exactly which words will make you angry, which accusations will make you explain yourself, and which insults will steal your focus. That is where manipulation begins, not with force, but with emotional predictability. Imagine 2 people standing in front of the same insult. One explodes with anger, raising their voice and trying to prove their innocence. The other simply smiles, says nothing, and walks away. Most people assume the first person is stronger because they fought back, but psychology suggests something different. The second person controlled the only thing that truly mattered: their emotions. They refused to let someone else decide how they would feel. This is the first lesson. Power begins where emotional dependence ends. The world teaches you to react instantly. Someone criticizes you, so you defend yourself. Someone misunderstands you, so you write a long explanation. Someone disrespects you, so you try to make them regret it. But every reaction keeps you emotionally connected to the very person you're trying to escape. They continue occupying your thoughts long after the conversation ends. Think about how many sleepless nights have been caused by people who probably forgot the conversation within minutes. Meanwhile, your mind keeps replaying every word, searching for the perfect response you wish you had given. That's not strength. That's emotional captivity. One of the greatest psychological traps is believing that every accusation deserves an answer. It doesn't. Some people don't ask questions because they want the truth. They ask questions because they want your attention. Others provoke you simply to observe how easily your emotions can be controlled. The moment you understand this, your perspective changes completely. Silence begins to look different. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is observation. When you stop reacting immediately, you create space between emotion and action. That space is where wisdom lives. Instead of becoming a prisoner of the moment, you become the author of your response. This is why emotionally intelligent people rarely make important decisions while angry. They know emotions are temporary, but consequences often last for years. History repeatedly shows that the calmest person in the room often has the greatest influence. Not because they're louder, but because they refuse to let chaos dictate their behavior. Their stillness unsettles people. It creates uncertainty. Those who expected anger suddenly receive nothing. Those who wanted to fight are left arguing with silence. And silence is incredibly uncomfortable for people seeking control. Human beings naturally search for patterns. When someone stops reacting the way you expect, your brain becomes confused. The script changes. The manipulation loses its rhythm. Suddenly, the person who thought they had power over you begins questioning themselves instead. That is the hidden strength of emotional discipline. It's not about pretending you don't feel pain. It's about refusing to let pain become public entertainment. There is a reason wise people often speak less than everyone else. They understand that words cannot be taken back. Every unnecessary explanation becomes another opportunity for someone to twist your intentions. Every emotional outburst becomes information that others can use against you later. This doesn't mean becoming cold or emotionless. Quite the opposite. It means respecting your emotions enough to protect them from people who haven't earned access to them. Imagine carrying a priceless treasure through a crowded marketplace. Would you stop every few steps to show strangers what you're carrying? Of course not. Yet people reveal their deepest fears, insecurities, and frustrations to anyone who provokes them. Then they wonder why those same weaknesses are later used against them. Emotionally powerful people understand a simple principle. Not everything you feel needs to be expressed. Not everything you know needs to be explained. Not every battle deserves your presence. As this mindset becomes part of your life, something remarkable begins to happen. The people who once controlled your emotions start losing their influence. Their insults feel weaker. Their opinions carry less weight. Their attempts to provoke you become predictable. And that's when a fascinating reversal occurs. The person who once watched your reactions now begins reacting to your silence. Because nothing frustrates manipulation more than someone who refuses to play the game. But emotional control is only the beginning. The next principle is even more powerful. Because you'll discover why the strongest people don't just master silence. They master the art of becoming impossible to read. The second principle is simple, but it terrifies people who rely on controlling others. Become impossible to read. Most people reveal themselves within minutes of a conversation. Their face changes when they're offended, their voice changes when they're nervous. Their body language exposes excitement, fear, jealousy, and insecurity long before they say a single word. They think they're communicating. In reality, they're giving away instructions on how to manipulate them. Imagine sitting across from a poker player who shows every card before placing a bet. You wouldn't need skill to beat them. You would only need patience. Life works the same way. Every unnecessary emotional display tells people exactly where your weak points are. The strongest minds understand that information is power, and sometimes, the most valuable information is the information you choose not to reveal. This doesn't mean becoming fake. It means becoming intentional. There is a huge difference. A fake person hides who they are because they're afraid. A disciplined person controls what they reveal because they understand timing. Psychology has repeatedly shown that uncertainty makes people pay closer attention. When someone cannot predict your next move, they become cautious. Their confidence begins to disappear because certainty has vanished. Think about the people who intimidate others without raising their voice. It's rarely because they're physically stronger. It's because they're emotionally unreadable. They don't rush to defend themselves. They don't overshare. They don't desperately seek approval. They simply observe. Observation is one of the rarest forms of intelligence. While everyone else is busy talking, they're collecting information. While others are trying to impress, they're trying to understand. While emotions are taking over the room, they're quietly studying patterns. Patterns reveal everything. Words can lie. Expressions can be rehearsed. Promises can be broken. But patterns rarely deceive. A person who constantly blames others will eventually blame you. A person who lies to everyone else will eventually lie to you. A person who only appears when they need something isn't building a relationship. They're building access. Emotionally intelligent people stop listening only to what people say. They begin watching what people repeatedly do. Because consistency always exposes character. This is where another powerful psychological shift begins. You stop explaining yourself. Not because you're arrogant. Because you've realized something most people never learn. People who genuinely care about understanding you will ask questions. People determined to misunderstand you will ignore every explanation. No amount of words can change a mind that has already chosen its conclusion. So why waste your energy? One of the oldest strategies of manipulation is provoking emotional reactions. If someone can make you angry, they control the conversation. If someone can make you defensive, they control your attention. If someone can keep you explaining yourself, they control your time. The greatest response isn't always the smartest argument. Sometimes it's no response at all. Silence creates mystery. Mystery creates uncertainty. Uncertainty forces people to reveal themselves. Watch what happens when you stop responding immediately. Some people become respectful. Others become desperate. Some become curious. Others become aggressive. Their reaction tells you everything you need to know. Because pressure doesn't only reveal your character, it reveals theirs too. Think of a lake early in the morning. When the water is perfectly still, every reflection becomes clear. But throw a stone into it, everything becomes distorted. Your mind works exactly the same way. When emotions are calm, you see people clearly. When emotions take over, you only see your reactions. That's why mastering yourself always comes before mastering any situation. Most conflicts aren't won through intelligence. They're won through emotional endurance. The person who remains calm longer usually makes better decisions. Better decisions create better outcomes. And better outcomes build lasting influence. This doesn't mean allowing disrespect. Silence is not submission. Ignoring unnecessary conflict is not weakness. Walking away from manipulation is not defeat. Sometimes the strongest move isn't proving someone wrong. It's refusing to let them steal another minute of your peace. Every unnecessary argument costs something. Time, energy, focus, creativity, inner peace. The strongest people guard these resources more carefully than money, because they understand something profound. Money lost can be earned again. Time lost never returns. Imagine spending years climbing a mountain. Would you stop every few feet to argue with people who insisted you'd never reach the top? Of course not. Every argument delays the climb. The summit doesn't care who criticized you. It only rewards those who kept climbing. This is why extraordinary people appear different. They're not emotionless. They're emotionally disciplined. They're not cold. They're focused. They're not ignoring people because they feel superior. They're protecting the attention that built their future. As your emotional discipline grows, another fascinating change begins. You become less interested in winning conversations, and more interested in winning your life. That's when people start noticing something unusual. They can no longer predict you. They can't provoke you the way they once did. Their words lose their power. Their opinions lose their importance. And without realizing it, the control they once had quietly disappears. But there's an even darker psychological principle waiting ahead. A principle that explains why truly powerful people never chase respect. Because they understand how respect is actually created. And once you understand that principle, you'll never seek validation the same way again. The third principle is the one that separates ordinary people from those who quietly shape the world around them. Never chase respect. Become so valuable that respect follows you. Most people spend their lives asking for recognition. They want to be appreciated, understood, and admired. They explain their sacrifices. They remind others how much they've done. They become frustrated when their efforts go unnoticed. But genuine respect has a strange characteristic. The more you chase it, the faster it disappears. Human psychology has always valued what appears difficult to obtain. That's why people naturally admire those who don't desperately seek approval. Confidence isn't loud. It doesn't beg for attention. It simply exists. Imagine two people entering a room. The first immediately begins talking about their achievements. They mention their success, their intelligence, and everything they've accomplished. They desperately want everyone to notice them. The second says very little. They listen more than they speak. They carry themselves with quiet certainty. Hours later, people remember the second person far more than the first. Why? Because real confidence never announces itself. It reveals itself through behavior. One of the oldest psychological mistakes is confusing visibility with influence. Being noticed isn't the same as being respected. Anyone can attract attention. Very few people earn lasting influence. The difference lies in consistency. People don't trust words. They trust repeated actions. That's why emotionally intelligent individuals stop making promises they don't need to make. They let results speak first. Think about a tree. It never tells anyone it's growing. It simply grows, season after season, storm after storm, until one day its roots become so deep that even the strongest ones cannot move it. Character develops the same way, quietly, patiently, without demanding applause. This is why Machiavellian thinking often emphasizes perception. Not because appearances are everything, but because people naturally judge what they repeatedly observe. If every day they see discipline, they assume discipline is your identity. If every day they see emotional stability, they assume pressure doesn't affect you. If every day they see consistency, they stop questioning your reliability. Your habits become your reputation, and reputation built on action becomes incredibly difficult to destroy. Now here's where psychology becomes fascinating. People rarely respect someone they can easily control. The moment they realize your decisions no longer depend on their approval, their behavior changes. They become more careful, more observant, more respectful, because certainty has disappeared. One of the strongest psychological positions you can ever occupy is emotional independence. Not isolation, independence. There's a difference. Isolation rejects people. Independence simply refuses to depend on them for self-worth. Imagine walking through life carrying an invisible remote control. Every time someone insults you, they press a button. Every time someone ignores you, another button. Every compliment, another button. Your emotions constantly change because someone else holds the remote. That's how most people live. Emotionally disciplined individuals eventually take the remote back. Their happiness no longer depends on compliments. Their confidence no longer disappears because of criticism. Their peace no longer depends on circumstances. And once that happens, manipulation becomes almost impossible, because manipulation always depends on emotional dependence. Remove the dependence, and the manipulation collapses. Another fascinating truth begins to emerge. The strongest people rarely seek revenge. At first, this sounds impossible. After all, don't powerful people strike back? Not necessarily, because revenge keeps you emotionally connected to the person who hurt you. Every plan, every thought, every moment of anger continues giving them space inside your mind. Why would you willingly hand someone that kind of power? Instead, emotionally intelligent people choose something much more difficult. They become indifferent. Indifference isn't pretending you don't care. It's reaching a point where your future becomes more important than your past. That's an extraordinary level of freedom. Think about an archer. Before releasing the arrow, every ounce of attention is directed toward the target. If the archer constantly turns around to argue with the crowd, the arrow never flies. Your goals work exactly the same way. Focus determines direction. Distraction determines delay. This is why remarkable people appear almost obsessed with protecting their attention. They understand attention is the most valuable currency they possess. Whatever consistently receives your attention eventually shapes your life. Feed your attention to drama, you'll create chaos. Feed your attention to discipline, you'll create excellence. Feed your attention to purpose, you'll create significance. Every single day, your attention is voting for the person you'll become tomorrow. Choose carefully. The world is filled with people trying to buy your attention. News, arguments, social media, comparison, outrage, endless opinions. Every distraction quietly steals time from the life you're trying to build. Powerful minds recognize this. They don't react to every headline. They don't join every argument. They don't defend themselves against every accusation. Because they know something most people never understand. Every yes to distraction is a no to your destiny. Eventually, something remarkable happens. People stop seeing you as emotionally available for manipulation. They realize guilt no longer controls you. Fear no longer controls you. Praise no longer controls you. Suddenly, the only thing directing your life is your purpose, and that's when you've reached a level very few people ever experience. But one final principle remains. It's the deepest lesson of all. The lesson that explains why the most powerful people never fear losing anyone, never fear standing alone, and never fear being misunderstood. Because they've mastered the one thing no one can ever take away from them, themselves. The seventh and final principle is the one that ties everything together. Become someone who cannot be controlled because you no longer fear being misunderstood. Most people live inside an invisible prison. It isn't made of steel, it's built from opinions. Every decision they make is filtered through one question: what will people think? That single question quietly destroys dreams, weakens confidence, and hands control of their future to complete strangers. The strongest minds ask a different question. Can I respect myself after this decision? Notice the difference. One seeks permission, the other seeks integrity. That is where real power begins. Machiavellian thinking teaches an uncomfortable truth about human nature. People don't always resist you because you're wrong. Sometimes they resist you because your independence threatens their comfort. The moment you stop needing approval, the people who benefited from your insecurity begin losing influence. That's why growth often feels lonely, not because you've become arrogant, because you've become unavailable for manipulation. Think about a puppet. As long as the strings remain attached, every movement belongs to someone else. Cut the strings, and for the first time, the puppet becomes free. Your fears work exactly the same way. Every fear of rejection becomes another string. Every fear of criticism becomes another string. Every fear of disappointing others becomes another string. One by one, you cut them, not through anger, not through revenge, but through self-awareness. Eventually, something remarkable happens. The opinions that once kept you awake at night become background noise. Not because you've stopped listening, because you've learned the difference between feedback and distraction. Wise people welcome constructive criticism. They reject emotional manipulation. There is a difference. One helps you grow. The other exists to control you. Knowing the difference is one of the highest forms of emotional intelligence. Now imagine standing in the middle of a violent storm. The wind screams. The rain falls. Everything around you is chaotic. Yet beneath the surface, the roots of an ancient tree remain completely still. Why? Because strength was never built during the storm. It was built long before the storm arrived. Human character develops the same way. You don't become emotionally disciplined when life becomes difficult. You discover whether you've been practicing discipline all along. Every difficult conversation, every betrayal, every disappointment, every false accusation, every lonely season, they aren't interruptions to your journey. They are the training ground. Most people believe life is testing them. In reality, life is revealing them. Pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes it. Pressure doesn't create strength. It reveals where strength already exists. That's why some people collapse under criticism, while others become unstoppable. The situation is identical. The mindset is different. This is the final lesson. Stop trying to control how people see you. Control how consistently you live your values. Reputation belongs to the crowd. Character belongs to you. The crowd changes its opinion every day. Character becomes stronger every day. Choose carefully which one deserves your attention. One day people will misunderstand your silence. Let them. One day they'll question your decisions. Let them. One day they'll invent stories because they can't understand your direction. Let them. You don't owe the world an explanation for every chapter of your life. Some chapters are meant to be lived, not defended. The strongest people aren't the loudest. They're the most consistent. They don't waste years proving doubters wrong. They spend years proving themselves right. That is why they become unforgettable, because while everyone else was fighting temporary battles, they were quietly building permanent character. Remember this. The lion never announces it's the king of the jungle. The mountain never argues about its height. The ocean never explains its depth. Real power has no need to advertise itself. It simply exists. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, pause. The next time someone demands an explanation, ask yourself whether they've earned one. The next time life pushes you toward an emotional reaction, choose intention over impulse. Because every time you master your emotions, you strengthen your future. Every time you refuse unnecessary conflict, you protect your peace. Every time you walk away from manipulation, you reclaim your freedom. And eventually, you'll reach a point where the world can no longer distract you from your purpose. Not because the noise disappeared, because your mind became stronger than the noise. That is the highest form of power. Not controlling other people, but becoming impossible for other people to control. If this message changed the way you see power, psychology, and emotional discipline, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave it in the comments if you're choosing silence over drama and discipline over emotion. Remember, the people who truly win in life aren't those who react the fastest. They're the ones who master themselves first. And once you master yourself, no one else can ever master you.